Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Today, we're going to talk more hands on tactical things that you can do, specifically how to do field trips on a budget and some out of the box field trip ideas. Now, I did talk about this in the October 2024 newsletter. If you haven't signed up for that, you can go to homeschool.com and sign up for the newsletter there. There's also a link in the show notes to sign up for the newsletter, but I do talk about field trips there. And the newsletter comes out it comes out once a month. I'm trying to get it out more frequently so that y'all have more resources to work with. Also, one thing that I'm working on is getting YouTube videos out that are not just the podcast, because currently on my YouTube channel, the podcast is there so you can watch it. But I'm working on some videos that are more visual, like how to do things. And so you can see day to day what some of those things look like, such as doing like a poetry tea time. What would that look like visually? How is it done? So if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, it's School to Homeschool. The link for that is in the show notes. If you want to check that out, be sure that you like and subscribe. And if you're on Spotify, iTunes, any other audio platform, please like and subscribe so that people who are needing and help homeschooling can get the help. I want to help as many people as possible not have a bad experience at the beginning of homeschooling and throughout, as I did at the beginning of our journey. So share the podcast with those who could use it. Let's help as many people as possible have a good experience. Okay, so I'm going to give you like just an idea rundown list. And today's podcast is going to be shorter. I just forewarn you, again, and more tactical. But I want to give you a list of ideas, and this is absolutely not a comprehensive list. So I'm sure that there's other ideas that you might come up with that are fabulous. So first, I'm going to give you the list, and then I'm going to talk to you about some out of the box ideas, as well as tactical tricks and tips to get the cost down if you're going to some of these places and they cost money. So we'll talk about that after the list, and then we'll talk about actually out of the box ideas. So, okay, so here we go. I'm going to give you the rundown now. Here it goes. Ready? You could do museums, art galleries, historical sites, animal sanctuaries, hikes, parks, farms, music venues, theater productions, living history museums, zoos, aquariums, nature centers, apiaries, mines, castles, boats, science centers, pumpkin patches, places of worship such as churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, monasteries. You could visit other religions, which is always fascinating to take our kids to and discuss. Orchards, farmers markets, amusement parks, creameries. You can be in nature. You can go to the ocean, the mountains, the desert, the forest, the lakes, the streams, etc. You can go to factories and take tours. Tour local businesses such as mechanics, bakeries, banks, credit unions, donut shops, restaurant, grocery stores, etc. Learn to make candles, collect honey, milk a cow, make soap or yogurt, and go to the movies during the day in the middle of the week. Oftentimes, if you go like on a Tuesday, the tickets are discounted. Essentially, you want to be a local tourist. And if you're traveling outside of your local region, it's a great opportunity to be a tourist. And guess what? It all counts as homeschooling, and you don't even have to do paperwork. You don't even have to make your kids write a paper about it. You don't even have to make them fill out worksheets. You can go just to go and enjoy for the sake of enjoying. And by golly, they learn all sorts of things. A couple other ideas: Capitol building, going to the county courthouse and watching hearings, visiting some of those municipal facilities that you have in your own town, which is really great. Touring the fire department, touring a police station. These are all things that you can do with your kids, and many times they don't cost money. But let's talk about the ones that do cost money for just a little bit. Things like the museums, the art galleries, historical sites, the sanctuaries, the theater productions. When I very first started homeschooling, I didn't know that most places, not all, but most places, museums and galleries and such, have homeschooling days. And oftentimes those homeschooling days are either free or they're discounted significantly. I mean, we're talking significantly discounted. So, what you can do is go check out their website and see if they do have any free homeschooling days. Oftentimes, they'll do it like once or twice a year. And so look and see when they are, put it on your calendar, or make sure you make reservations because in some cases you might need reservations. For example, our Capitol building I'm in Colorado, and our Capitol building sometime in April or May, I can't remember, is doing a homeschooling day. And they have all these really cool things set up on top of what they would normally do for homeschoolers. Um, but again, you have to register for it. I know the Molly Brown House Museum, the Unsinkable Molly Brown, is in Denver, and they do special homeschooling days where the tickets are not only cheaper, but they have all these really cool activities that they do for homeschoolers. And so be sure to check websites of places that you're interested in. Now, even before you do that, make a running list of all of the places that you think would be fun to go to. I know here where I live, sometimes like I've driven past like these random little museums, like a trolley museum or like a train museum. I'm like, oh, that would be interesting to go see. Same with Denver. I'm like, oh, what the heck is that? And so I just put it on my list. And I have a list that I keep in my phone of places that I want to go to. And I make sure, because we do have a regular field trip day that we are doing this year. We've set a time, like this is our day that we're going on our field trips so that we do it. And then I've started planning, like these are the field trips that we're doing on those specific days. So be sure that you go to websites, check out and make sure that they see if they have a homeschool day, or if they have free days, because a lot of times, like the Botanical Gardens in Denver this fall did a free day. Was it packed? Yes, it was. On the homeschooling days, will they be packed? Yes, they will. But when you have a lot of kids, it saves on the budget. So, and it helps keep you within budget. So even though it's packed, like on the Botanical Gardens in Denver did a free day, we went with some friends. It was packed. We still had a great time. So check out when the free days are, check out when the homeschooling days are. Again, a lot of times they'll do them a couple times a year. Some will do them quarterly. Most don't. Most just do them like 1 or 2 times a year. So check out when those are and get them on your calendar and make the reservations if needed, and do it sooner than later because they will fill up. Another thing you can do is when you check on the website, if they don't have, you can also check to see if they have discounts for homeschoolers. If they don't have discounts for homeschoolers, call them. A lot of times museums will have discounts for school groups and for educational groups. So what you can do is that you can call them and ask them if they'd be willing to do a homeschool discount since it is technically a school group. A lot of times, or you can say, what do I need to do to get the school discount? Now, I've done this with multiple places, and inevitably, they tell me, well, you need at least this many people there, and then we'll give you the discount, but you need to have X amount of people paying. And so, for example, this past fall, I checked the Manitou Cliff Dwellings website, which is a local tourist place here in Colorado Springs. And I called them and I said, I have a homeschooling group. I notice you don't offer any homeschooling discounts at this time. But you do for school groups. Could we get the school group discount, and what do we need to do to get it? And they said, you need at least 15, I think it was 15. It was like 15 paying kids, and X amount of paying adults, and then we can give you the discount. And you just need to set up what day you're coming. So I didn't like, I know a lot of homeschoolers, but I didn't want to email every single homeschool group. So I emailed a co-op that I'm mostly a part of. I say mostly just because the day that they meet is a day that my kids have other stuff that they do. And so I go when we can. But I emailed that co-op, I texted that co-op, and then I put on a local homeschool Facebook page, hey, I've got this discounted rate if for this day, if I can get X amount of people. And I actually went ahead and reserved it. And I asked him, I'm like, can we just pay when we get there? Because I didn't want to pay for a bunch of people that I don't know. And a lot of times they'll say, yeah, that's fine. If you can get the group together, you can pay when you get here. That isn't always the case, but most of the time is the case. So for example, with Manitou Cliff Dwellings, I said, okay, we need like 15 kids, and I think it was 5 adults or something. So I put it out on the homeschool Facebook page and said, hey, if you want to do this, please let me know, because I have to add you to our numbers so that we can get the discounted rate. And message me privately, or just put it in the, in the comments below, how many you plan on bringing, how many kids and how many adults. We did that. We ended up having, oh my gosh, that day we had like, I don't know, we had like 50 kids show up and like 15 moms or something. We had a lot of people. So normally, and oftentimes if you do it on one of their off days, they are more prone to be like, yeah, we'll give you a discount for that. Another place I called and I was like, what's your least busy day? And they said, well, it's usually Tuesday. And I'm like, great. If we brought a group on Tuesday, what group? I noticed you don't have a school discount, but what group rate can you give us if I bring, and how many would we need to bring to get a discounted group rate? Sometimes they'll do a group rate and you can still negotiate and be like, well, it is a school group. Can we get more of a discount? And oftentimes they will say, absolutely, yeah. Not always, but oftentimes they will. I've even called, there's a museum in town that's very, very, very expensive. Actually, I have not taken my kids to it because it's like $20 or $25 a person. And that's like kids too. And so I talked to one guy and he said, if you talk to our marketing guy, he may very well enable you to have a discount. So one of the things I'm going to do is reach out to him and say, hey, look, could you do a homeschooling day, or could you do this? That's something I'm working on. Now, does that take effort on your part? Yes, it does. And with homeschooling, it takes effort on our parts as moms. We are more involved with our children's education because we're in charge of it, right? Than say a public schooler who they're not 100% in charge of the child's education and they let the school take care of everything. Well, in this case, yes, we're in charge of our kids' education. And so sometimes, my friends, we've got to make things happen. So as is in the case with field trips, which, it is what it is. And so be proactive and don't be afraid to ask. The worst that they can say is no. You could also call and say, hey, I didn't see a homeschool day on your website. Do you have one? Okay. So with places like that, you can reach out and make an effort. Another thing that you can do is like some more. So there's all those really cool venues you can go to, and the living history museums and all these really cool museums. Another thing that you can do is reach out to, and this is where we're getting into the out of the box idea. Reach out to local businesses and municipalities, fire stations, police departments. Find out who's in charge, or who own, if it's a small business, who owns it, and talk to them directly and say, hey, we've got a small group, or maybe it's just your family, who want to tour your bakery and have you talk to us about business. Would you be willing to do that for us? So I started doing that, and y'all, the local businesses get so excited. So I reached out to a local bank. It's not a national bank, but a local bank in town, and said, hey, I met with the manager of the bank, and I said, hey, would you be willing to do a field trip for these kids for a few minutes on what time of day is the least busy? And he was so excited. He's like, actually, I would love that. We could do like a 30-minute little class, and our bank does publish these like workbooks on budgeting and all these cool activities. And I could talk to the kids about fraud and this and that and the other. And for the older kids, I could do XYZ and it'd be really cool. So we scheduled it. It's coming up here. Um, and he was really excited. I also reached out to local orthodontists. I've reached out to a florist and said, would you be willing to teach a class? And of course, we will pay for the flowers, and we will pay, we are happy to pay. We don't want this to be a free thing for you, but what can we, would you teach these children how to arrange flowers? What did the florist say? I would love to. That would be an honor. Um, I've gone to a sourdough bakery where the baker, who's been doing it for 25 years, and his sourdough starter is from Italy and it's hundreds of years old. He was excited to have us come, and he talked to the kids about how sourdoughs work and how starters work and the science behind it. And the kids were totally enthralled with what he had to say. And then, of course, we bought loaves of bread because I wanted to, honor his establishment. I've also reached out to a franchisee of a pizza chain in town and said, could we tour your pizza place? And we'll come on a non-busy day. We don't want to be intrusive, but just, spend 15-20 minutes learning. And he's like, oh, I'd be willing to do a half hour or even an hour tour and talk about business as well as owning a franchise and making the pizza and all of this stuff. We are planning on going to a local creamery and learning all about that. Most small businesses are eager to share what they've learned. We went to a local farm where she sells her own soap that she makes, and she did a whole class with my kids about soap making, and they got to make the soap, and then we went back and they picked up their soap after 60 days because it has to cure for so much time. She even let them milk her cow so that, because, anyway, we did stuff with the milk. And so if you just ask, people are likely to say yes. Now, if you don't know farmers or if you don't know any soap makers or candle makers, let me tell you a little secret. Go to a local farmer's market and you go along and you just ask them. I talked to a jewelry maker at this past summer and said, hey, would you be willing to teach my kids jewelry making? And she said yes. And I've still got to set that up. And I said it'll be later in the year, probably more towards the new year, that I'll be reaching out. But and we'll pay for the supplies, right? I don't expect for them to eat those costs. So a lot of times, all you have to do is just ask. I want my kids to have real world experiences. And so one of my goals this year is to contact a CPA, take the kids to a mechanics shop and take them to all of these different areas. Again, local businesses are excited to share with you. And that's a lot of the YouTube videos that some of them I'm currently working on with past field trips that we've gone on. I'm still working on editing those videos, but I want to be able to show you, like, these are some places you could go. And I just gave you a list. Another thing, a lot of times big factories will give tours. For example, in Boulder, Colorado is the Celestial Seasonings factory. They shut down their tours for a while, but a lot of factories are opening up, and like Celestial Seasonings just opened up for tours a few months ago again. And you can go and tour the factory. If you're in Hershey, Pennsylvania, you can tour the chocolate factory. If you're in Texas, Bluebell used to do factory tours. I'm sure that they still do. So you can do factory tours, which is really cool because then they get to see in real time how things how things are made, which is really, really cool. I actually wonder if you're in Austin, if you could tour like Samsung or Tesla. Anyway, just a thought for those of you who are in Austin, Texas. because they've got some big factories there. And so it's worthwhile to at least ask. If you don't see any tours available, find out who's in charge and ask, because a lot of times they'll say yes. The worst that they can say is no. Another thing you can do is visit the Capitol, visit the county courthouse, go and see a trial happening. Uh, my almost 18-year-old son had a really cool experience. He went to the courthouse. A couple of his friends went. I'll just tell you the story. A couple of his friends went fishing. Now these boys go to public school. They're great kids. They're some of his best friends. He's got a kind of an eclectic group of friends. Some go to public school, some are homeschooled, some have already graduated, but they get together pretty regularly. They debate. They come from all different religious affiliations. They come from all different political persuasions, and they get together. They discuss religion. They discuss politics, and they debate, and then they play a board game and have a great time and go home, or they'll come and watch a movie. And I always have to tell them, if they're over at my house on a given weekend, please don't be so loud, because I'm trying to sleep. I'm trying to go to bed. But they get really loud and boisterous. Just a great group of boys. They've also gotten together and cooked and made, breakfasts and dinners. But a couple of the boys went fishing at a little tiny local pond, and they didn't have fishing licenses. And neither of these boys come from super sportsman type families. So they didn't really realize that you had to have a fishing license in order to fish at this little pond. And it was a public pond, so it's fine that you fish there, but you have to have a license. Well, they ended up getting ticketed for not having fishing licenses. And these guys, y'all, these boys, they're good boys. They're sweet boys. They're not troublemakers. These are not the boys that you're like, oh, you're a troublemaker. These are the boys that you're like, they're in all the clubs and all the activities, and they're kind of dorks, great dorks. And I say that with all the love in my heart, because my son does hang out with them, and he is also one. But they're great kids, and they're smart kids. A couple of them have already been accepted to Ivy Leagues for the fall. They're seniors. Anyway, so they go to court. Well, my son gets dressed up because he does not want to miss what is going to happen in court. It ends up they're there for 5 or 6 hours. When it's helpful, one of their dads is an attorney, so he went and represented them. But they were prepared to pay the fine. They took it to court, and I do have to say, immediately after they got the ticket, they went and got fishing licenses right away, because they're like, you're supposed to have a fishing license. They're like, what? We didn't know that. Where do we get that? So they went immediately, got fishing licenses, and then awaited their court date because they were going to challenge it. Anyway, so my son goes and I should have taken my kids. Looking back, I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have taken my kids. But he goes to the court date. He dresses all up in a suit. He goes. His friends all dress up in their suits. They end up getting, not even getting community service, because these boys already do community service, and so they were able to argue that these are kids who it was an accident, it was a mistake. They didn't realize they needed fishing licenses. Anyway, the judge actually thought it was really sweet and let them off without the fine. So they ended up not having to pay the fine, but they did show their fishing license. They're like, look, we got the fishing license immediately. Same day, we went and got the fishing license. And it was brought up to the judge, or the magistrate, that these are boys that regularly serve in the community, that are sweet kids, that don't cause trouble. They volunteer at nursing homes. We're talking, these boys are good kids that try so hard to help the community, right? And so they ended up getting off. Now, some of you are like, they should have paid. They were prepared to pay. They were prepared. They had their money ready. but they did want to fight it. Anyway, my son was not one of the people who was fined because he was not on that little fishing excursion, and he knows that he has to have a fishing license. So he always goes to get one if he's going for just a day of fishing or whatever. But my son comes home, loved it. He loved it. He was there for hours. I'm like, kiddo, you were there forever. And he was like, I know. It was so cool. It was so cool hearing the whole thing. And I loved it. I'd love to go back and see another court case, because a lot of times you can go in and they're open to the public. You just have to find out when they are. Now, I wouldn't take my kids to a murder hearing, a murder trial. Probably not the best thing to take your kids to, but other things within the courthouse are open to the public. So go and take your kids. Find out a hearing that you could go to that would be appropriate, and let your kids go and see. Now, if you got really, really tiny kids, probably not great, but teenagers, you've got your young teens and then teenagers, great thing for them to see the law in action in our judicial system. Also, take them to the Capitol building. I know in the state of Utah, if you call the treasurer's office and ask for a tour, he'll give you a tour, and talk to you about what he does. The Capitol building in most states will give tours, and you can take your kids. And a lot of them have, I think I've already mentioned this. I can't remember if I had mentioned this. They have homeschooling days that you can go and take your kids to. I know they're in Denver, the Denver Capitol has a full-on homeschooling day with so many cool activities. That's the cool thing, is when you do find the homeschooling days, they do extra stuff for the homeschooling kids. It's kind of awesome. So also learning to make things. As I mentioned, we contacted a local farmer. They showed us how to make soap because they do sell soap. I found out there was this, I was driving past this one neighborhood and I saw that these people had beehives. And so I went and introduced myself. I was brazen, and I went and knocked on the door, and I'm like, hey, this is going to sound really weird, but I have always wanted to learn to keep bees, and I think it would be really great for my kids to learn. Would you be willing for us to come and learn about bees? Y'all, the couple, it was an older couple, were ecstatic. And so they said, yeah, springtime, like this was like a month ago that I talked to them. So wintertime, bees are not super active, right? And so they're like, yes, we would be honored. Here's our phone number. I gave them my phone number. They're like, we even have small beekeeping suits for when our grandchildren come and visit. We have beekeeping suits for them. So your kids could just wear their suits, and that we would be so honored if you would come and we could teach you about bees. We love them. Like, you just have to think a little bit out of the box. What things do your kids want to learn? What things do you want to learn? And then you find locally, I guarantee there's local people who teach whatever that is, whether it's like learning to spin yarn or milk cows or see an orthodontist in action, or a dentist, or a dermatologist. All you have to do is make the effort and reach out. And a lot of times it doesn't cost any money. Now, do I usually buy bread or extra candles or whatever if I go? Yeah, I do. I mean, with the farmer, I paid for the soap. I was like, I will pay you for for all of the resources that you used. I'm not going to make you pay for those things. And they were happy to take it, and like, yes, actually it does cost money. Right. So I don't ever go in going, I want this for free. I want to take, I always offer to give something in return. But I'll tell you, we've been able to do some of the coolest field trips just because I asked. And a lot of times they'll do it at cost. When we very first started homeschooling, we had another soap maker come in, and she actually moved. But She came into my home and we got 3 homeschooling families, and I met her at a farmer's market and I said, could you teach my kids how to make soap? And she said, well, the lye is really dangerous. And I said, well, what if you work with the lye and then we stand back and you bring it to our house and you do it. And then you talk to the kids about the process as you're dealing with it with your gloves and stuff. She goes, we could do that. So we did that. And she did let the kids add like rosemary and orange and some spices and things like that. And she talked to the kids about the history of soap making as she sat and made the soap. The kids loved it. She loved it. And then she gave us it made enough that it made a loaf of soap. And I said, we'll pay you for your time and we'll also pay you for the loaves. She said, you don't have to pay me for my time, but the cost is expensive to make the loaves of soap. And so we like, okay, so we split it up amongst the 3 families, and it ended up costing us like $20 per family or something to pay for the actual soap. And then we came home with this big loaf of, it was at my house. So we took each took home a soap loaf and then would let it cure for 60 days. Again, with our family, we've done soap making a couple times, but all it takes is you to just ask. So look around, look at the things that you want your kids to learn about. Do you want them to learn about taxes? You could teach them, or you could ask a CPA, not during tax season, to talk to them. You could go to a mechanic and say, can we come and you talk to us about what you do and what you like and what you don't like, what's hard and what's not? Especially local businesses that are not franchises are more likely to say yes than like big. Like I went to a local bank. I didn't go to like a national bank because I know that the likelihood of them saying yes would be slim. And they do give stipulations. I was like, can I record? And they're like, no, you won't be able to record, with the banker there. He was like, no, you can't record what's going on, but I'm excited to teach this class. I'm like, that's fine. That's fine. So all you have to do, y'all, is think out of the box. So this is your action plan, is I want you to make a list of field trip ideas that you would love to do with your kids. Think of things that would be really fun. Think of museums that sound good. Or if you see something on Instagram, keep a running list of places that people go. That would be really cool. Hikes that are interesting. Museums that you hadn't heard about before. Think about factories that are near you. Make a running list, and then make a plan of when you'd like to visit these places and start calling them. Just call. That's all you have to do. It doesn't hurt to at least ask. And you don't have to do all the things. And if it doesn't sound interesting to you, don't do it. You don't have to go. It's fine. Anyway, I hope that helps. So, y'all, you can have your children's learning. Oh, last thing I'm going to say, and you don't have to make them write a paper about it. I mean, you don't have to make them do worksheets. Sometimes in my opinion, the actual doing or experiencing is the learning enough. You add in pieces like you have to write a paper, suddenly it's no longer fun. It becomes work. And children learn through play. They learn through the fun. That's how they learn a lot of things. And so if they're going to the beekeeper and they've got their gloves on and they know they might get stung, don't take your kids there if they're allergic to bees, though. That's bad. But go just for the sake of experiencing it. We don't have to tack on a test for them to learn. As a matter of fact, I find that it tends to backfire. They tend to not learn much if we expect them to learn what we tell them to learn. You need to learn these things. No, just go for the sake of just enjoyment. That's it. And decide as a mom and dad and grandma and grandpa, what things do you really, 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 really want them to learn? And then make it happen and have fun on those field trips. Anyway, hope that helps. Y'all, you are doing so much better than you think you are. You got this. We'll talk next week. If you enjoyed this today, please like and subscribe. You could also join our private Facebook group at School to Homeschool or sign up for our newsletter at www.schooltohomeschool. Have a great day.